All right, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We appreciate you coming here to the Hancock County Public Library in order to listen to the Hancock County Coroner candidates. We're going to be having a debate and discussion here tonight. My name's Wayne Addison. Don't have any idea how I got suckered into doing this other than Noelle asked me and she's awful nice. So here I am. So I'm going to do the best I can. I've talked to each one of the candidates and told them what we're here to do and this kind of thing. So we're going to start the evening off. I'm going to have each candidate to introduce themselves and give an explanation of what the debate will go through. They'll each have 2 minutes to introduce themselves, say whatever they want to say, and then we'll rotate on from there, and then we will begin asking the questions. Each person will have a chance to answer the question first. We'll rotate through. They are in alphabetical order, and that's how we're going to start the thing out. I think I'm kind of in charge of time and everything else too, so I've got a little thing here that helps me to keep up with the time. It'll go off if it goes at 2 minutes. I have given the candidates a secret code of what will happen if it goes beyond 2 minutes that we're not going to explain right now. Hopefully we won't need to, but we're going to go from there. So I'm going to introduce each candidate and then I'll start off and let each one of them tell a little bit about them. So this is the candidates for Hancock County Republican, for Hancock County Coroner. First we have Dan DeVoy down on the very end. Then we have Joe Fortner, Rudy Nyland, and David Stillinger right here. These are our four candidates for election for Hancock County Coroner. So Dan, I would like to give you the floor to start with. You've got 2 minutes to kind of talk about yourself and go from there, okay?
Thank you, Wayne. I want to thank you all for coming out this evening. I also want to thank Noelle Steele and the Daily Reporter for having set up this ceremony for us. My name is Dan DeVoy. I'm a Republican running for the Hancock County Coroner's Office. I reside here in Hancock County with my wife, Kim DeVoy, my 2 adult children, and 2 grandsons. I proudly served 21 years in the military with the U.S. Army. I retired here in Hancock County and went straight to work for the Hancock County Sheriff's Department. For the past 17 years, I've been serving the Hancock County Sheriff's Department as a reserve deputy sheriff. I also work full-time for the Hancock County Community Corrections Office as a deputy. I've also worked as an investigator for the prosecutor's office. In 2001, I became a state-certified death investigator and a deputy coroner. I proudly served this county for 7 years under the coroner then, John Jester, and was his chief deputy coroner. In 2008, John Jester left and became the chief of police for Greenfield Police Department. And I was chosen by the precinct caucus to fill the coroner's vacancy for that year. In 2012, when the coroner at that time was relieved of her duties of official misconduct, I was once again elected by the Republican caucus and served again as the coroner of Hancock County. If I am elected, I pledge to devote my attention, my experience, and reconstruct and bring back and restore the respect back to the coroner's office by providing you compassionate, professional, and experienced scientific investigative services. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Dan. Okay, now we'll move right on to Joe Fortner. He'll give his 2-minute introduction.
All right. Again, thank you for coming, and the reporter, and of course for Wayne for his expertise here in the MC. I'm also a United States Army veteran. I served during the Vietnam era. After the military, I worked here in a local factory for about 3 years. I left there, started my own trucking company, and I ran it until 1983 when I joined the fire department as a volunteer. In 1985, I came on full-time as a firefighter, went to paramedic school, and spent 25 years there. Along with that, I also worked 6 years as the deputy coroner for Dr. Fred Counter. I don't know those of you that know who he is. And then I also spent 25 years in law enforcement, almost 2 years at Greenfield Police Department, and then 23 years at the Hancock County Sheriff's Department. And over the course of my public service career, it has all been right here in this county. And I hope to, after May 3rd, be your candidate for the fall election so that I can continue to provide my service and expertise to the citizens of this county. I have investigated deaths. I have dealt with families as a result of the deaths, and it is not an easy task. And I too hope to bring credibility and respect back to the coroner's office. With that being said, again, thank you very much for coming, and let's get on with the questions.
All right, thank you, Joe. Now we'll go with Rudy Nyland.
Thank you, everyone, for having interest in this race. My name is Rudy Nyland. I was born and raised in Hancock County in the McCordsville area. I'm raised by my parents, and I am married to my wife, Elisa, and I have 7 kids, 6 boys and a girl, and we currently live in the Wilkinson area. As I was growing up, I became very interested in the fire and paramedic service, and was on Greenfield Fire Department for about 5 years, and now currently on Buck Creek Township Fire Department as an assistant fire chief overseeing the EMS operations. When I became a paramedic and was going on paramedic runs, I developed an interest on coroner runs and asked a lot of questions about those. In 2006, I was hired as one of the deputies under John Jester. I have been serving the coroner's office since 2006 under 4 different coroners throughout that time and serving the community of Hancock County. During that time of 10 years, I've been on over 300 cases that I have been lead investigator on. And over the last 3 years, I've been taking over the daily function of the Hancock County Sheriff's Department, making sure that death certificates are completed, making sure that any subpoenaed reports are being taken care of. I take care of part of the bills that's coming in, and also dispatch myself or other deputies to runs as needed. Of those 300 cases, we had 300 cases that I've been on. Last year we saw 129 cases. 40 of those were autopsied. Hancock County is certainly growing, and my plan is to serve as coroner for the next 4 years.
2 minutes, right on the nose. Good job. Guys, what I'll try to do is when it gets about 15 seconds left, I'll try to at least raise my hand. That way, kind of give you a little bit of a warning, so we won't have to use our secret code. Now, David Stillinger, if you would like to introduce yourself for the audience here.
Thank you. Good evening, and thank you for coming. My name is David Stillinger. I am the owner of Stillinger Family Funeral Home in Greenfield. I've been in Hancock County for about 30 years. My wife and I, April, we live here in Greenfield now. We have combined 3 boys, Josh, Jordan, and Gavin, and 3 dogs. I attend Brandywine Community Church. I'm a 15-year Greenfield Rotarian and its immediate past president. I also served on its board. I still do today. Also was chairman and on the board for the Meals on Wheels of Hancock County for several years. I'm also involved in the Hancock Masonic Lodge, the Shrine Club, the Scottish Rite, member of the FOP, and the Murat Shrine. I'm also a former 10-year member of the Wilkinson Volunteer Fire Department, where I was the captain, the rescue captain, and EMT, and trained many fellow firefighters on fellow departments for auto extrication and certified first responders. I'm also a certified death investigator with the state of Indiana. I, along with many of you, have watched the decline in the service of the Hancock County Coroner's Office over the past 2 terms. My professional role in the industry has allowed me to experience the shortcomings of this coroner's office firsthand. The lack of follow-through, integrity, accountability on the behalf of the coroner's office has left a public black mark on this community and has touched grieving families in the worst way at the worst time. When families have to wait up to 5 to 6 months from time to time on a cause of death, something's got to change. As a business owner, I understand the importance of being fiscally responsible and believe good stewardship of tax dollars is vital. This particular office isn't about holding a part-time job. It's about serving families at the worst time and sometimes serving justice to protect the community. Instilling change is my directive for the Hancock County Coroner's Office. Thank you.
All right, good job, guys. Okay, now we're going to begin the question portion for this evening, and I'm going to go ahead and start with Dan because that wasn't actually a question. Each one of them had it. Plus, that's how I got it written down here, and that'd be a whole lot less confusing for me. And then after the second question, then we'll go to you, Joe, and we'll work our way through. This question I put together because I know most people in here probably know coroners and this kind of thing and what you guys do, but as we see, there's a lot of people in the audience that may not necessarily know everything about it. So I thought this question is, what do you consider the role of a county coroner in a community?
The county coroner, number one, should be probably one of the most, I guess, versatile people in your county. To start with, the training behind being the coroner, understanding both the medical side and the law enforcement side. The other part of that is as the county coroner, you're considered the guardian angel of this county. You are responsible for everything that happens in the way of a death in this county, be it by contagious disease, a bus crash out on the freeway. You're responsible, and you better take it seriously because that's your job as the county coroner. What is his purpose? To bring the trust back to this coroner's office, do his job. But as the guardian angel, my job is to make sure that all of you are safe from contagious diseases, infections, and anything else that may come arise to this county. I need to find out what it is, secure it, and get it taken care of.
Thank you, sir. If any of you need me to repeat the question, we will. Joe, are you okay as far as to answer that same question?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, if you would answer, please.
Okay. I think the county coroner is a very important part of the political structure in any county, as well as being responsible for investigating deaths. It's also responsible for gathering evidence. It's also responsible for dealing with the families. Most of the time, the only time people come in contact with a county coroner is when something bad has happened. I hope to change that if I'm fortunate enough to become the county coroner. And I want to make it not just a reactive office, but I want to make it a proactive office. If some of you have read the grid that was in the newspaper, one of the questions there, and my answer was that if I am elected, that I want to get a group of people together from law enforcement. I want to get a group of people from mental health, social services, healthcare providers, and see if we can't develop programs to help fight what's going on with our county to prevent deaths, whether it be accidental, suicides, overdoses, homicides. I think to get this education out there to just every age group, not any particular age group, because you see this in the full spectrum. And I think part of doing that is getting a group of people together that we can work together and develop these programs and get them out there, not just once or twice a year, but maybe, hopefully, my goal would be to do them quarterly so that it's not forgotten, that we don't just come one time and then it's over. As well as, again, dealing with the responsibility that comes with the coroner's office. And that's where I think my experience in both the medical field and law enforcement gives me the advantage. I don't know how many people really have researched what the coroner's job is, but as well as doing everything that I've mentioned, if something should happen to the sheriff or the sheriff and the chief deputy, it is also the coroner's responsibility then to come in over and take over the jail. So I think my experience gives me that edge over the other candidates.
Okay, that was our siren, but you did right at the time. Thank you, Joe. Rudy, would you please answer the same question?
Yes. The main goal for the coroner is to represent the county. And by doing that, we want to triage the scene. We want to basically divide it up into two sections. We want to have and show compassion to the family. They are at a loss of what's going on. It's a devastating incident for them, and then a horrible, life-changing event. So one half of our duties is to help guide them through this, to make sure they know what the next step is, what the next phase is. And then the other thing is, the important part is the investigation. We have to triage the scene just like any other incident. We need to determine, is this something that's suspicious or is this something that appears natural? We want to make sure that we have an agreement between law enforcement, like usually it's going to be a detective and an evidence tech. We want to have a three-way agreement on whether we need to do further testing like lab work or giving an autopsy. But our main, our job as a county perspective is to give a voice to the decedent and to determine the cause and manner of death. And then it's up to our own individual character to give that needed compassion and care and advice to that family, because they are going to need that support.
Thank you, sir. Mr. David Stillinger, would you please answer the same question?
Well, I agree, obviously, with the other three gentlemen in all the different roles of a coroner. I think, along with my job as a funeral director, the biggest component of that is trust. And when we walk onto a scene, we have to exude a sense of security for the family. You have to provide protection for that scene, for that family. They're going to be in a state of turmoil, not understanding really what's going on and why a funeral director and or a coroner might show up on the scene. And it's a necessary thing that the coroner show up and take control of the scene and work with the various county entities, the police department, sheriff's department, and protect the scene if it is one of those situations. We have to react as if every scene possibly is a crime scene. And unfortunately, sometimes families just don't understand that. That why are we being so rigid, or why are we taking such a stance that we're trying to keep people out of the scene? But we have to protect all of the different evidence that's there, and then decide, as Rudy said, you know, does this scene need to go further as a crime scene, or can we back off and create it more as a scene where the coroner's going to work with the family doctor or somebody else to sign the death certificate, or is there going to be a need for an autopsy? So the coroner has to come in and just provide the overall, I guess, organizational skills to control that scene, and then decide from there on, as the gentleman said before, you know, what type of scene is it? Are we going to continue on going down the road of investigation? And then provide compassion, because those families are in a turmoil. In past terms, we've seen coroners not acting so trustworthy on the scenes. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Okay, thank you. Very good job, guys. We'll begin with question number 2. This one will, Joe, I would like to ask you to start off answering this question. Joe Fortner. The coroner is expected to work closely with police during some death investigations. What is your current relationship with local law enforcement?
I believe I have a good relationship with them as being part of the law enforcement family for 25 years. I still currently work with different officers through my job at the hospital as the EMS coordinator. So we interact a lot there, especially when they bring prisoners in. And then, of course, several of them are my friends. But I think with my history as a law enforcement officer, that relationship is already kind of built there. Because in that group of people, you learn to trust and rely on each other. Because when you're out there and you're working, whether you're working as an officer or as a coroner, you have to rely on each other to have each other's back. So I think that relationship is there. And I think we have a really good probability of continuing that relationship.
Thank you, sir. Rudy, I'd like for you to answer the same question, please.
I think cooperation and communication is very important, and that has been done with myself on past calls that I've had. It's very good to have an investigation from the police department, but remember, the coroner's office is a check and balance of the system. So we want to have a dual investigation with law enforcement, but we also want to have an equal investigation. And that's why the coroner's office is so important for law enforcement investigations, because it is a dual investigation, but it is a separate agency, a separate set of eyes. It's the only type of law enforcement call is a death where they have to have an outside agency come in and assist with that investigation. So it is very important, of course, for the coroner's office to have the trust and support of the local law enforcement community. And that is one thing that I've done my best to have that support, communication, and cooperation. And that involves scene communication from the very beginning. And like I said earlier, we want to have a scene agreement with law enforcement on the scene. If one of the three, an evidence tech, a detective, a coroner, just don't see eye to eye, we need to go to a next level or decide to do an autopsy. But that is a check and balance of the system, which is a good thing for Hancock County.
Thank you, sir. David Stillinger, would you please answer the same question, please?
Can you repeat the question?
Yes, sir. The coroner is expected to work closely with police during some investigations. What is your current relationship with local law enforcement?
Well, I haven't been arrested, so that's probably a plus. So I'm guessing my relationship is pretty good at this point in time. Having been a past firefighter and rescue captain for Wilkinson, I was out on many horrific scenes over the years. Also worked on the conduits on ambulance service. And many times we're out on the interstate, so we were with various different agencies, the state police, county police, local town marshals and things like that. And it was the key to everything is communication. You got to know where command is. You got to set up command. You have to make sure that the whole scene is protected for the sake of the citizens of Hancock County, but you also have to protect the scene for any evidence or anything like that. And as Rudy said, yes, there's got to be some cross relationships where everybody kind of relies on each other, and there is a brotherhood between the fire department and the police department, and hopefully there's a brotherhood or a growth between the relationship of the coroner. But the coroner kind of has to stand back and make sure everything's being done as he's been trained to do, keep control of the scene, and make sure that the custody of the evidence is kept in place for the sanctity of that scene, so nothing is tainted. But I think that ultimately communication is the key.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Dan DeVoy.
The question again, please,
The
sir.
question is, the coroner is expected to work closely with police during some death investigations. What is your current relationship with local law enforcement?
Okay, well, that's not real hard to answer. I currently am a law enforcement officer. I've been with the Hancock County Sheriff's Department since 2000 when I got out of the Army and went straight into the Sheriff's Department and started working there. So I've been a reserve deputy for 17 years with that department. I currently work full-time right now with the Hancock County Community Corrections Office as a deputy. And Rudy, who I have admired for years, he's worked with me, and I've worked with him several times, and most of the time with these other two gentlemen also. But when we come to a scene with law enforcement as a coroner, the focus is the body. The police own the scene. We take care of the body. And if we keep that separation in mind when we go to a scene and allow the police department and the detectives to do their job, and we go ahead and we concentrate on the body, then we'll make a good coexistence with each other. I always entered the scene, the almost 10 years that I was a coroner, working as a deputy coroner, a chief deputy coroner for John Jester. When I walked onto a scene and there was a detective there because the necessity of the death resulted in the need of an investigation, I would always go to the detective first, and I would ask him what he has. This is his scene. It's not mine. That body is mine, but this is his scene. Ultimately, we have to fall and digress and wait and coexist with the police department and the detectives. I know almost every law enforcement officer in this county, and I know a bunch of state police officers. We work on the forefront all the time for the drugs that are happening right now in this county, and we continue to work on it. Thank you.
Thanks, sir. Okay, Rudy, this question will start with you. This is the third question of the debate. What will you look for in a deputy coroner, and how many deputies do you hope to have on your team?
Well, what I look for in a deputy coroner is the same values that I have. And we certainly need to keep up with the training that's required. The Indiana Coroners Training Board has a guideline of training, and you really need to have that type of training before you investigate a case on your own. I would treat it as an apprenticeship for anyone who's a newer deputy. It takes experience and training to get involved and learn how to work these death calls. I would plan to have 4 deputies. I feel like this county is growing. Last year, like I said, we had 129 calls. I feel like I would take about 50% of those calls and divvy out the remaining calls to other deputies. I would offer my guidance and support, but with this growing county, we also want to have a system where we can have maybe 1 or 2 deputies on a scene to help each other out. Sometimes we have advanced scenes that take an extended period of time, and you want to have that additional help and support. So 4 deputies would be my answer.
Thank you, sir. I'll tell you what, guys, I'm going to go ahead and read the question in between. I can talk fast, so I'm going to go ahead and read the question. I think it's probably fair for you guys. That way you'll know exactly what the question is each time. So this one is for David Stillinger. What will you look for in a deputy coroner, and how many deputies do you hope to have on your team?
Well, the qualities obviously are going to hopefully be somewhat like mine. I think the biggest key to having a good deputy coroner is someone that wants to do the job first. Not me going out and soliciting them. It's them coming to us. Also having an eye for detail. This job is so detail-oriented that you come onto a scene and, like Dan says, the body is ours to kind of guide over and be vigilant over, but you work the scene from the outside in. You don't work from the inside out. And you come on a scene, you need to be making sure that you're watching all those details, crossing the T's and dotting the I's, and making sure that you have things as they should be before you start to possibly taint any kind of evidence. The other thing is a servant's heart. Our budget is such that I think they're getting about $100 a call now, and sometimes that individual is going to overexpend the hourly rate to make it worth his while, in a sense. So you kind of have to have that servant's heart to serve the community and to help out, because it's not always going to come out to a nice hourly rate. And you're out in the middle of the night in the pouring rain, in the snow, in a factory, as I have been. So, and the final thing, probably 3 to 4 deputies, depending on the workload. And unfortunately, as the county grows, we're going to have to grow the budget and grow those deputies.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Dan DeVoy, what will you look for in a deputy coroner, and how many deputies do you hope to have on your team?
Well, I may be shooting myself in the foot here, but one of my greatest prodigies in the coroner's office is sitting right there. Rudy came on to the coroner's office, and I trained him to begin with when he came on back in 2006. And Rudy has always been a good coroner. What did we look for when we brought Rudy in? What did I look for when I brought Rudy in? His willingness to get up in the middle of the night and walk through frozen water to bust somebody out that fell in the water and froze to death. His willingness to crawl up stairs and help me carry somebody down. His willingness to come out there. And there were several other factors too. This job involves integrity and honesty. I can't walk away as the coroner from one of my deputies and worry about what he's doing. I have to know without a reasonable doubt, with no doubt, that he's going to do the right thing. That when I walk away from that house, if I go check on his death scene, just to come out to see if he needs my help, that he's going to do the right thing. I would say integrity, honesty is one of the 2 top ones that I would look for as a new deputy coroner. Because without that, this is a rough job. This is a real rough job. If you've never done this job, it is incredibly hard. But the honesty and integrity, above all, is a necessity. The rest of it will come with the coroner's training, as Rudy found out. And as Joe and as David has also seen, I've seen these guys on many scenes. The 3 other people sitting here, I've seen them on many scenes with me. I want to also bring to the point, the other half of the question is, how many deputies? I believe that we need to have at least 4, if not 5. There should be some highly trained and highly skilled deputies on board to begin with, and always one in training. Thank you.
Thanks, sir. Okay, I believe, David Stillinger, it is your turn to begin first. The next question is local law enforcement agencies, and I also guarantee the Hancock County Probation Department. Did I skip somebody?
not get
I'm
the
sorry,
answer?
Joe. Hey, my gosh. That's the first mistake in my whole life.
you like-
I tell you, isn't that amazing?
I know you got a dinner date, but really,
All right, Joe, I apologize.
that's okay.
And I'll kind of watch the clock. I may give you 2 minutes and 2 seconds. What will you look for in a deputy coroner, and how many deputies do you hope to have on your team?
Well, I'm kind of like the rest of them. I think you want integrity. You want people that's going to be honest, that are honest. You want people that have experience, and you want people that have the training and the knowledge. I think, as well as being an investigator, I think the health side of it is important, so that if you're trying to figure out what the death or the result of the death is, you need to have that experience and that education of understanding how the body works and what happens to it when things on it start to fail. So I think that's a very important part of being a coroner, as well as being an investigator. So with that, I would look for people that have experience both in investigations and in healthcare, just because I think it's important that they have to have both sides of that. And education's never ending. When I first got into EMS, I thought I was just going to go and I'm going to take a class and that's the end of it, you know what I mean? But it's not. And the coroner's job is the same way. You have to have that continuing education to stay on top of things. And you need to be able to communicate the new things that you learn along to law enforcement that you work side by side with, so that everybody is kind of on the same page when you're doing an investigation. And as far as the number of coroners, deputy coroners, I think probably 4 or 5, because as the county grows, the coroner's office, as Rudy attested with his numbers, the workload continues to increase year after year after year. So I think 4 or 5 to start with, and then maybe have a list of others that might want to come in should somebody decide they don't want to do this job any longer, because it is a stressful job. It's just like EMS. You can either do it or you can't, and there's some people that don't figure that out until the first time they have to do it. Thank you.
All right, thank you. I gave you 2 extra seconds to
Thank you, Wayne. I appreciate it.
make up for my mistake. Okay, now, David, this one question is for you. It says, local law enforcement agencies say that Hancock County has a heroin problem. What are your plans to educate the community on these issues so that some of these deaths the coroner's office is investigating might be prevented?
Obviously, education to the types of deaths that are out there are so important. I know from relational experiences and people that I know in the hospital, and also fellow employees, we have people that have a heroin issue that I know personally, and it's a tough situation. And I think communication between all the agencies, such as the hospital, the coroner, as to the types of deaths that we're dealing with, just let the hospital letting us know, how many overdoses that they're dealing with that don't pass away, and working closely with any of the drug enforcement officers. Hopefully, the county provides some sort of drug program where that we're working together as a team to get the education out there, because I'd hate to see my own children, one of them which is here, ever come upon this and have this struggle. And knowing this one person that has the struggle in her life with her child, it's devastating. And it sneaks up on you, it's silent, and it happens so rapidly. But our office is a quiet office. It's an office of you don't want to hear from us as far as coroners are concerned. So ultimately, for us to be educational, maybe go out into the schools and say, this is the kind of deaths we're dealing with, and show a picture of what heroin addiction is and what it does to people, because it's horrific.
Thank you, sir. Dan DeVoy, same question. Local law enforcement agencies say Hancock County has a heroin problem. What are your plans to educate the community on these issues, and how would the coroner's office investigate these to help to prevent them?
Well, the Hancock County Sheriff's Department is correct. And we do have a heroin epidemic in the state of Indiana, not just in our community. It is very bad. Doing the job that I do on a daily basis, heroin overdose is a daily deal with us, with me. We are on the forefront right now, the Greenfield Police Department, the Sheriff's Department. We are on the forefront. We're the head of the spear that's trying to take down this heroin problem. And every day that we come to work, almost every day, heroin touches us in some way or another as law enforcement officers. In the community corrections office, in the jail, out there on the street, young kids, 16, 17 years old, doing heroin, robbing houses to make money to get heroin. The only way I know how to deal with this as a coroner is to maintain contact with our DARE officers and our police officers. They don't want to hear from me. Those children that we have in schools, we need to maintain the DARE officers inside there. We need to have that officer that goes down there. He's like the resource officer. He's in uniform. The kids trust him. They need that trust. They see me once in a blue moon in a newspaper maybe, or they don't even know who I am. But that DARE officer and that resource officer, they know who he is, and they'll believe him. And that's how we get a hold of these children's brains, and we tell them about this drug epidemic that's going on here. These drugs are dangerous. They kill people every day. We have overdoses in this city every day. If you think I'm kidding, you are out of the loop. It is bad. And as a coroner, we have to deal with it. And I'm sure Rudy has probably got a few stories himself about having to deal with the heroin problem right now. The education part is our DARE officers and our resource officers. We have to get our kids educated. Thank you.
Tried to push it before. Okay, Joe Fortner, got you that time. Local law enforcement agencies say that Hancock County has a heroin problem. What are your plans to educate the community on these issues so that some of the deaths the coroner's office investigates might be prevented?
Well, I know you're going to ask that question. I'd save my answer till later. But like I mentioned earlier, I mean, we do have a heroin problem in this county, as well as some other drugs and alcohol, because I see it every day that I'm at work in the emergency room. They come in cardiac arrest. Some we give the medication to and get them back. Some of them we don't. And then that's when people like Rudy and other deputy coroners have to come and find out what happened. But again, what I want to do is create this committee of, again, law enforcement, mental health, social services, hospital people, include the DARE officers, NASA. Those organizations, they do a good job, but their resources are limited too. They can only do so much with what they have to do with. So I think by getting a group together and coming up with educational materials, doing videos, doing slideshows, going out doing presentations, and then look for grant funding to help fund these projects. There's money out there, I believe, that we can get. It's just somebody has to sit down and get the structure together and start working toward that and to get that job accomplished. Because again, I see it every day that I'm at work, sometimes once, twice, sometimes 3 or 4. We've seen them come in groups from parties, and there has to be a plan. There's something we have to do to try to prevent this from getting any more out of hand than it already is. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Rudy, local law enforcement agencies say that Hancock County has a heroin problem. What are your plans to educate the community on these issues so that some of the deaths the coroner's office investigates might be prevented?
Well, I certainly agree with what everyone has said. They always say that the person who's overdosing, a lot of times they are trying to chase that very first high, that first time they took that drug, because a lot of times they are not going to have that same experience. So they're always trying to get a stronger dose or a mixture of the dose. So our job is being that piece of the pie with everyone else in the community. It's a team effort, and we want to make sure we have a thorough investigation, make sure that we have a caseload that the detectives for the law enforcement agency can do a follow-up. Both Greenfield Police Department and Sheriff's Department has develop drug task force officers and detectives for that. So we need to have that communication with them. But we certainly want to look at other drugs too, because heroin is certainly out there, but we still have a prescription drug abuse problem that really has just an equal amount of death in the county. And a lot of times it's middle-aged people. It's not always 18 and 19 and 20-year-olds. So, you know, we have to, I think, always reevaluate and look at the big picture of drug abuse as a whole.
All right, thank you, sir. Okay, now we're back to Dan DeVoy for the first question, or the next question again. How would you prioritize the coroner's budget, and where would you look for savings?
Indiana coroner law dictates a lot of the coroner budget. And from what I've seen in the last 2 terms of the coroner in this office, the budget has not been upped. And we've all suffered for it in the coroner's arena. Until we have somebody that's solid inside of the coroner's office that understands that budget and that can go to the county and put a budget and show them and present a budget that's feasible for the next fiscal term, we're not going to go anywhere. We have more people in our county, more deaths happening. We're never going to catch up. The coroner's office will always be behind because prior administration has not been able to project. They haven't projected at all. So my plan is to get in there and project. Also, you also have to look at the coroner's business, the coroner's job. When I was actually a coroner, after John left and went to the police department, I went to the morgue over here in Marion County where our autopsies were performed. It's a business. It is a business. Those people charge us money for autopsies. They charge us money for all of the equipment, everything that happens there, and a forensic pathologist. And then all of the testing equipment, vials, all of the recording equipment, the pictures, and everything else. It's all a business. But it's a necessity at our business, at our level. So I went to them and I told them, my budget is suffering badly, very badly. I want to continue to use you, but I can't. I can't at this current price. I got them to come down $200 on an autopsy. That's big. I don't know if you know that, but it's big. You can get them to come down $200, you just scored. And the other part of that is too, and Joe hit on this, is there is grant money out there. I've just learned how to start writing up grants, and I started looking around. There's grant money that we can get. I don't know, we can pay. Thank you. I'll pass. I don't want to get in trouble.
I'm sorry about that. But that was the time. Joe Fortner, how would you prioritize the coroner's budget, and where would you look for savings?
Well, it's like Dan says, a lot of the budget is set by state statute. However, with that, I would like to work with the county council as well as the county commissioners and figure out how to bring the office and the budget up to where it really needs to be. Because it has been an office that a lot of people don't think about and they don't really understand how it is. And it does need to be run by business, like Dan says, because that's what it is. But as far as cutting the budget, there's not really a way to do that as far as what you need to set it for. I think where the savings will come in through the coroner's office to the taxpayers is by having good, qualified, experienced people that understand what's going on and understand the investigative part of it, so that hopefully, I mean, if they have to go to autopsy, they have to go to autopsy. There are certain ones that have to go. But I think by building relationships with the coroner's offices in other counties, with the pathologist, and even with our local hospital, that not every case has to be an autopsy. So I think if you've got the people that have the experience and can rule out, maybe instead of going to autopsy, you can draw samples, blood and urine samples, have them tested at our local hospital to save and cut back on the cost of the autopsies. But again, you really don't know how that's going to play out until you have to deal with it, because you're not going to know what the circumstances are until you're there and start the investigation. But again, I think with good, educated, trained, and qualified people as deputy coroners, hopefully we can cut back a little bit on the cost of the autopsies.
Thank you, sir. Now, Rudy Nyland, how would you prioritize the coroner's budget, and where would you look for savings?
Well, like everyone else said, there's not a lot of money in the budget. The budget for Hancock County is about $58,000. 40 autopsies was done last year, and out of those 46 of them was a complex autopsy, meaning it was done as a possible homicide-type fatality. So those are always going to cost more. So when 44,000 of your budget's going to autopsies, and that's probably not going to change. A lot of times, the criteria for autopsies have increased over the years. And with the prosecutor's office, they want overdoses to be a complete autopsy, because if that goes to court, we need to have that evidence and that information for a trial to occur for a death of an overdose. So I know as a coroner, I would not be in this by myself. I know I would have help from the auditor's office, help from the commissioners, and help from the councilmen. So that's what I would ask for, help on trying to figure out what we can do in the future. And I think another thing is we want to have a spot in the county building. We want to have a place where families can come and talk to us individually without meeting in a parking lot or at in the office in a hallway. So I think that is something also in the future to work with our county officials on what better steps we can have for a county office.
Thank you, sir. David Stillinger, how would you prioritize the coroner's budget, and where would you look for savings?
Well, being a funeral director, we kind of look at numbers and trends in the death rate, and we're supposed to see an increase in the death rate in the next few years up to 2020. And that's a variable that's hard to account for. Also, anytime somebody might have a murder that's in another county, we are a donut county, so from time to time we have people dropped on our property in Hancock County, and that causes just everything to be more expensive for our county. So it's hard to really knock down a number and say this is what we're shooting for, but it all comes down to budgeting. And truly, I agree with Rudy that I'd say the budget shows that it's being eaten up heavily by autopsies. And as Joe said, you have to kind of be a little more decisive in your investigative skills to decide whether this body needs to be autopsied, maybe just blood work, and also decide if the scene is truly one that mandates more investigation or not. Anytime you can do things consistently, I think in the past couple years we've had some issues with things just not being done consistently. I know there was a van that was purchased that is no longer being used. These are things that the county has paid for but not being utilized. These are concerns where you just basically have to budget and be consistent with your budget and follow that budget to the best of your ability.
Thank you, sir. Okay, guys, Lord. This will probably be the last question. Time flies when we're having fun, I would assume. So I think this will be the last question we'll have. Each one of you have an opportunity to answer, and then each one of you will have 1 minute to talk after that is over. So for the last question, we will start with Joe Fortner. What are your top priorities if elected coroner?
To bring the office back to a respectable level, to regain the trust of the community, that they know that if the coroner is involved, that the person there that they're talking to is going to be straightforward, going to be able to answer their questions and help them through the process. Because it is a very difficult time and it is a very difficult process to go through. And you have to be able to walk that line between making the tough decisions and being able to help the family and steer them in the direction that they need to go and not end it there. You know, it's not uncommon for family members to come back to the coroner's office 6 months, 12 months afterwards, still looking for answers that maybe they didn't get initially, that may be questions that they didn't even think about at the time. Because again, when they come in contact with a coroner, it is the worst time of their life. It is not something that they can think about. It's not something that they can form their questions. So we have to be able to continue that relationship with the families and let them know that we're there no matter when they have a question that they come up with or that they finally want an answer to. They should be able to contact us, and get what they want.
Thank you, sir. Rudy Nyland, what are your top priorities if elected coroner?
My first top priority would be to get a staff ready for the year. I would certainly hope that I'd have an opportunity, if I was elected, to have some of the people sitting with me be on, and I would hope to serve with them if I don't get elected and continue the service to Hancock County. With those new staff, we would want to make sure that the community knows that we're there to serve them. I'd want to have a liaison and to different aspects of the job. A liaison to the funeral home, a liaison to the hospital, a liaison to law enforcement, so that we can go to their meetings and their training, so we can have that communication with each other. We have that right now with the LAPC Fire Department group, and we also have that with the prosecutors group, but we can increase that with the hospital and other places that serve us. And then with that, having trust instilled into the community. And that is by doing our job and showing that compassion and experience.
Thank you, sir. David Stillinger, what are your top priorities if elected coroner?
Well, as you walk into the office, obviously, it's going to be looking at the budget, looking at your staffing, increase staffing to a point where it works within the budget. Because the ultimate goal here is to kind of rebuild this office from the ground up. We all kind of know that there's problems. We've talked a little bit about some of the problems. Good quality staffing that helps people on the scene, that truly gives them good feedback so that they know what's going on. There's constant feedback. A lot of times it gets lost. As Joe said, it gets lost between entities, but what we need is coroners that communicate with the family even while they're waiting on autopsy results to come back, blood work and things like that. Many times they're calling the funeral home saying, why don't we have this cause of death? Why don't we have a death certificate so we can do our financial work? That should be the job of the coroner, not the funeral director, because the funeral director is just saying to them, our hands are tied, we're just waiting on the coroner to make a decision. So we need that, as he said, communication between the families and the coroner. Also, we need to be visible. The coroner, as elected, should be a very visible entity. We don't have that. And I feel very strongly about that. If you're not going to be visible, there's not going to be trust. There's nobody to go to at this point in time that says, hey, I am in charge of this office. So that's what I feel like we need.
Thank you, sir. Dan DeVoy, what are your top priorities if elected coroner?
Well, just about it, you reiterate everything that's been said already. The first thing is the budget. Know where you're standing. You're walking into a business. It's part of a business, and it's also a business of people. It's a business of families. It's a business of community. And when you walk into this county coroner's office, you have to understand where your money's at, where I'm going to go with it. Putting people in the right place. If you don't have good coroners, you've got a problem. So making sure that the right people are in the right place. Understand all of the people that work for you also have families, and coordinate that accordingly. Make sure that the guy on shift that day doesn't have something going on with a birthday or something. Be flexible. And Dave hit on it right up front. The coroner needs to be visible. If you guys need to see your coroner, that person needs to come out. I don't care if it's his case or not. If I put one of these guys on a case and I'm the coroner, I may just show up there. I'll call him and say, I'm gonna come give you a hand. It used to happen to me when I'd go out there. The coroner would just show up and help me. And that's what we need to do, is help each other. I think that the coroner's office needs to be restructured, and I agree with the other three gentlemen here. It needs to be restructured with people that care, and they care about this community, and they care about their job. One of the things we've been missing in this county for the last 2 terms is someone that cared about this job and that cared about the county. I would hope to be that person. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. All right, guys, that's the end of the questioning portion, and each one of you will now have 1 minute to summarize your evening, as if there's anything additional that you'd like to say. Again, I'll try to raise my hand when there's 15 seconds to go, and if you're close to finishing it out, obviously to try to let you finish it. We started with Dan last time, so this time I'm going to start with David. So I'm going to start on the end here as David Stillinger. You've got 1 minute to summarize your candidacy.
Okay. I want to thank the Daily Reporter and Wayne and Joe and Dan and Rudy here for a great night. It's obvious that we have a lot of the same concerns, and I feel really strong about our Republican candidates here right now. I just want to say I feel like I have the business experience, the medical background, the investigative skills, the legal credentials, and the grief and loss experience that is somewhat unmatched by my fellow constituents here. I've had the experience of serving notice of death with sheriff's departments, and most of all, I have the servant's heart, which shows in my years of experience with volunteering in this community. I just want you to know that I will be the highly visible and approachable Hancock County coroner that this community deserves. My name is David Stillinger, and I'm instilling change in the Hancock County Coroner's Office. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Okay, Rudy Nyland, would you summarize your candidacy?
Yes. Hey, thank you very much for being here tonight. I also want to thank my family for all their support when I go on those calls. Sometimes you miss birthdays and you miss activities planned, but you got to realize that when you're going to these calls, it's a life-changing event. And you see the high-profile cases in the news, or you hear about them, but for every high-profile case, there's a lot of natural deaths that you're just taking care of, helping them guide them through the experience, and making sure they know what the next thing to do is. I think if one word was there for the coroner's office, it would be trust, and that's what I feel I can bring.
Thank you, sir. Joe Fortner, it's now your turn to summarize your candidacy.
Okay. I'm not going to talk a lot about my experience because I've already given that information out there. But what I would like to do again is thank Wayne, the other candidates, you, but most importantly, I'd like to thank my family and my friends for giving me the support and allowing me to come out here and put myself out here for your scrutiny and for you to look at me and look at my background and look at what the job consists of. And hopefully if you do that, I think you will see that even though I'm surrounded by excellent help, I believe I'm the best candidate for the county coroner position, and I really appreciate you coming out and listening to me and hope for your support. Thank you.
Thank you. Dan DeVoy, you have 1 minute to summarize your candidacy.
I want to thank you all for coming out here tonight. Thank you, Noel, for having us out here and setting this up for us. I would like to leave you with this. I will be your guardian angel of health, safety, and welfare of this community. Deaths resulting from hazardous, contagious, or infectious diseases will swiftly be identified, reported, and secured. I will bring back the respect and the confidence that this office used to have and it deserves now. The coroner's office will work with city, county, and state law enforcement officers to help stop the flow of illicit drugs in this community and the prescription drugs getting into the hands of our young people in this community. I will consistently strive towards the goal of a safer and healthier community for Hancock County. Thank you.
All right, thank you, sir. I tell you what, as one person of this community, I was glad to be able to volunteer to do that because you guys are the ones that have put yourselves out there. I'd like to ask everyone to give them all a big round of applause for doing that. So, good job, guys. I think you did a great job, and it's 6:30 right on the nose, so I think we did okay. Again, guys, you did a fantastic job. Thank you very much.